Now, for more on what the Biden presidency could mean for investors and what to watch out for, if you are an investor, let's get to Libby. Libby Cantrill is head of U.S. public policy at PIMCO. And let's see, corporate individuals over 400 and then capital gains. Does any of this give you pause? You're at a big investment firm. Just wondering what you think, Libby.
Yeah, we have, as you would predict, been having lots of conversations internally about this and with our clients. But Joe, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but really what's going to be incredibly important to sort of sort out the kind of rhetoric to the reality is the composition of Congress. Right. Because, of course, as we all know, it's very easy to say things, much more difficult to practically implement them. As we especially see this on the tax side. And I think our expectation is that, yes, taxes will be going up under a Biden administration, assuming that he has a Democratic Congress, a Democratic Senate in particular. But once they get through the machinations of sort of the legislative process, they're likely not going to be as draconian as what maybe looks on paper. So especially around the capital gains going up to the ordinary income levels for those who are making more than $1 million a year. I mean, could that happen? Sure. But if you have a narrowly divided Senate, things like that could very much get watered down. So I think the bottom line here is, yes, taxes are going to go up under a Biden administration, again, assuming that you have a Democratic Senate, but likely are going to be watered down once you get through sort of the machinations of the legislative process.
Andrew probably wants to ask the question he asks a lot, Libby. And Andrew, your question about given the economic backdrop because of the pandemic and other things, will it be harder? Or is it a good idea to even attempt to do that? And if you were elected, could you have, go ahead, Andrew. You think Joe Biden would have second thoughts about doing something that might dampen
I think there's a
recovery.
I think there's a real question about whether you'd want to raise corporate taxes or frankly, any taxes in the midst of this pandemic, given that there's still conversations about whether there's stimulus necessary to keep the economy going. And what raising taxes would mean in the midst of all of this. That's not to suggest that it may not make sense in the future, of course, to raise taxes in a pro-cyclical way when things are better, in large part to pay for all of the things we've just encountered. But at a time when there's still a conversation about stimulus, I wonder what you think.
No, I think Andrew, it's an excellent point. I think sequencing is going to be top of mind here for both Biden and for Democrats, especially if they don't get any stimulus before the election or even before January of 2021. I've been of the view that the political downside risk of not passing anything before the election was just simply too great. But that does not look like it's actually the case. It looks like any sort of hope for additional stimulus before the election, at least, has faded very significantly. So especially if they're in that situation come January 2021 with a new government, a new administration, and they haven't passed any stimulus, raising taxes is not going to be priority number one. It's going to be getting the economy on firm footing. And I think that does include a more of a rescue relief package, but also more emphasis on recovery, which will likely be, more infrastructure, more jobs, and what have you. So I think you're exactly right. And this is not lost on the Biden folks. They're not going to be tone deaf. Going into a slowing economy, they understand raising taxes is not necessarily great macroeconomics.
So to put a fine point on it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to ask you, so you don't believe, and we had Vice President Biden on this program and asked him basically the question I just asked you, which was, in the midst of a pandemic, would you raise those tax rates? And he said yes. So you think that that's not necessarily a bluff, but a bit of hyperbole given the way you're thinking about it, or no?
Well, no. Look, I think we have to take, former Vice President Biden at his word. What I'm saying is that once things actually go through the legislative process, this is not just about the president, right? You have to actually get a bill passed through Congress. And this is where, again, sort of the composition of Congress and how, what the Senate looks like in particular. If it is a very narrowly divided Senate, those, new Democratic Senate senators are going to have a view on what they want to do. And I think that the review will likely be a focus on reviving the economy. Now, with that said, and I just want to be clear here, I mean, there is no sympathy for very top earners on Capitol Hill right now, I think on both sides of the aisle. So, I mean, at some point, will taxes be increased under a Biden administration on those folks? I think absolutely. I just think the sequencing will matter. And again, when you go through actually the legislative process, when you bring in other members of Congress, that's when I think there will be, a finer, more focus on
okay,
sort of
Libby, thank you. Thank you. We need to treat these issues very delicately. I think we did a good job there.